Hey there, beautiful people. This is Gina Robinson, and you are listening to the Renew Podcast. You are in the right place and always welcome here. All right, ladies, welcome back to the Renew Podcast. And we have got a special guest with us today. Pastor Lauren and I are here. Hi. This is my favorite part of my job, if anybody didn't know that by now. But anyway, it's not the only thing I do. But it is the most fun thing that I get to do. One thing that I have just always enjoyed is hearing people's stories. And there's a quote once that I can't even remember who said it, but it was like, stories are verbal acts of hospitality. And I believe that God just continues to weave our lives, really, and we know it's for His glory if we allow Him to use it. And today we have a friend with us who's also a member here at Open Door Church, and it's Cindy Taylor. Welcome back.
Hello. So glad to be here.
I know. And she had, if you guys have been listening any to the Renew Podcast, I encourage you to kind of go back. Lauren was just saying that she had gone back and listened to the episode, Cindy, where we recorded your story of having your twins, and your best friend was the surrogate.
Yep.
And just that whole journey of disappointment and grief and feeling like God wasn't there, but He was all along.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed hearing the vulnerability and just the gift of friendship and how you guys walked through that. But surprise, people, because God does do the unexpected.
I'm going to be crying this whole entire time. I might as well just go ahead and say that, especially postpartum. I'm like,
We've got all the hormones raging. First of all, she is postpartum. My son just got married this past weekend, and Lauren is raising teenagers.
It's just all the same.
So we
all
excuse us all today. But anyway, one thing I love about you is you are willing to just share those deep, intimate moments and what God's doing. So we want you to just tell it. Because really shortly after we recorded 2023, you became...
pregnant. So, yes, it happened. So we were just trying to figure out the dates, but so February or January, we recorded the podcast, and then I found out April that I was pregnant. I got pregnant in April. So I found out, maybe in May that something was wrong.
But what was it? I forget, because we chatted a little bit before this.
Yeah.
But
I went up to New York, had a little too much fun at my brother's wedding.
Yes.
And I think there was another girl who got pregnant too, and then everybody else got COVID. I said, well, you had a great wedding, Timmy. I said, either you got pregnant or had COVID. I was so grateful. I was the one who got pregnant. So I'm just, I can't even believe that there's a part 2 to this. I never thought that would happen. Like I said, and Wesley and I have been married tomorrow. It'll be 15 years.
Oh, congratulations.
And so for 15 years, we had no idea that I could even get pregnant. And so it was, a huge surprise. So basically, do you want me to start from the beginning?
Of course. Of course.
We're here for all the details.
Yeah. Okay. So went up to New York, had a really good time, came back, and then Wesley and I, it was funny, so we go to have a place at the beach.
Yes.
And we were, him and I just went out it was like a Friday night or something like that to place. We got sushi, we were drinking wine, and it was just a really nice night. And I said to him before we left, I said, we might need to stop at the grocery store on the way home so I can grab a pregnancy test. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, it's so weird. I know my cycle has always been off kind of ish, but it had been sort of regular. And so I was like, but I haven't had it's not right. Something's not right. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, are you worried about it? He was like, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried at all. Yeah. No, I'm not worried about it. And I was like, okay. So we got one, and then we went home, and I was like, well, I'm not going to ruin a good night. I'm just going to go to bed because it was late. I was like, but then obviously I couldn't sleep. I'm like, okay, something's wrong. So I got up at like 5 o'clock that morning and took the test, and it was, I bought the cheapest test at the grocery store. So I was like, I don't want to spend a lot of money on this. And so the line came up and I was like, I don't think this is right. I called my mom immediately. I was like, do you think this is possible? And she was like, yes, it's possible. She's like, go get another test. She's like, absolutely it's possible. And I was like, oh my God. Well, I had left the test in the bathroom. And when he came downstairs, he was like, what? Is this right? And I was like, I don't know. I got to go get another test. And he was like, yeah. We need to go do that. And so I went to get a test, like the ones that everybody gets after the fact, like pregnant, not pregnant. And it came up pregnant immediately. I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
What is happening? And I was just in like total disbelief the entire time. And was thinking this cannot be possible.
Yeah.
So whenever I got pregnant before, when we were trying through the IVF and all the things, there was only a handful of times that I got pregnant and then miscarried right away. It was like within a couple of weeks.
So
it's
like disappointment after disappointment.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And so I immediately thought, okay, this is not going to happen. This is setting me up for just like a huge disappointment. And I'm like, okay, I don't really feel pregnant. Like I know I, missed my cycle, but I just don't really feel it. So I'm not going to get all crazy. And so right after that, I have like clockwork, basically. I started spotting and thinking, okay, yeah, here we go. Like this is how it's going to go. This is it. And so I made an appointment with the doctor immediately, and they were like, come on in. And each time, like anytime I went to the bathroom, I was spotting. And so I was like, okay, well, here we go. So went to the doctor, and they did the ultrasound. They ran a bunch of blood level tests. And the doctor said to me, she was like, you know what? If I wouldn't have known your history and I wouldn't have known what you had been through in the past, I would have thought that this is a normal pregnancy. She was like, everything looks normal. Your levels look normal. Everything is good. And I was like, okay. Well, then literally the day after I left the doctor, I started getting horribly sick. And it was on from there. I was like, okay, every day I was nauseous, still spotting. And so it was an emotional roller coaster. It was awful. And so I kept having to go back to the doctor again and again just to get my blood work taken. And so I was like in this weird period of like not wanting to be excited, not feeling good, but then still staying hopeful. And she kept telling me, just be cautiously optimistic. And I was like, okay, I'm cautiously optimistic right now. But still, you can say that all day long. And in the bottom of your, in the pit of your stomach, you're like, okay, I know how this goes. And I really don't want to be set up for disappointment again.
Yeah.
So we didn't tell anybody, and we were just kind of like going through the motions, and I felt horrible. And then people at work were like, what's happening? They're like, you're never sick. Like, what's going on? And I was just like, I just don't feel good. And finally I was like, right now I'm pregnant, but I don't know if it's going to stay or what's going to happen. And they're like, oh my God, of course it is. Like, this is it. Well, and I kept going to the doctor, and she was like, it's a good thing that you're sick, because the sicker you are, the better your chances are of basically saying that it's going to stay. Yeah. So I was like, okay. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, thankful that I was sick and still cautiously optimistic, and literally just like every single day praying to God. Like I was reading Luke chapter 1 is like the story of how Mary finds out that, she was pregnant, and how Elizabeth finds out she's pregnant. And I'm like going over this over and over and over again, thinking, okay, nothing is impossible. This can happen. This can happen. And so it was like I said before, it was the most emotional roller coaster I had ever been on. It was just awful. Because you don't want to be excited, but you do want to be excited because you've never experienced this, So
you were having all the emotions, and your hormones were, and then you're like, and when someone says cautiously optimistic, they mean the best when they say that. But at the same time, for someone like you who really, I mean, therapy would call it trauma.
Right.
That you, over your past.
Yeah.
It just kind of, I can't imagine how, I mean, that had to have been a roller coaster that entire time.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And I mean, it was between my husband, my mother-in-law, and my mom, like calling them every other day. It seemed like this is happening. I'm miscarrying. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then we would go through the waterworks, and then I'd go to the doctor, and she's like, you're fine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening with me? And so I think that part of it too was just really hard. But I want to say the pregnancy was a very typical pregnancy. Like literally they told me right from the get-go, usually, you know, in your first trimester, you're nauseous. Then the second trimester, you feel great. Then the third, this is all the things that happen. And literally it was like the week I started each trimester, all the things happened. And
it's
I was
like textbook.
Oh, yes. But I mean, when I started feeling better and not nauseous, I was worried because then I was like, wait, I'm supposed to feel nauseous. And so I drove myself crazy literally every day of that entire pregnancy. It was wild. And I felt bad too because, you know, I really wanted to enjoy it because I had never experienced it before.
Yeah.
But I really didn't. And I hate even saying that out loud. And I felt really bad about it. And I remember going to work and even saying to Lauren, like, she was like, what's the matter? Because I was just losing it at that point. And I was like, I am so tired of feeling so sick. I was like, I really should enjoy it. And I know I shouldn't complain. I've never been pregnant. I always wanted this, but I really hate this. I don't like it at all. And so she was just kind of like, it's okay. You're going to be fine. It's all right. But I mean, it was woo. It was a doozy.
I feel like so many, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I feel like so many women can relate.
Yeah.
Just going through.
Well, that's the thing too, is that so many people, like, you don't, and everyone's like, your body's made to do this. Your body's made to do this. I'm like, my body is not made to do this.
I thought for years I couldn't.
Not my body. Yeah, I know. Because I'm like, I really don't enjoy it, guys. But, you know, it's so funny because I never heard all the woes of pregnancy. Like I don't know whether if I just heard it and just kind of put it to the back of my mind, but never realized like all the things that go into it and all the things that happen to your body and what happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so it really felt like I was an island. Like every day I'd come in and be like, I have the worst sciatic pain. Like I can't move. And Lauren would be like, that's normal, Cindy. That's normal. And I'm like, no, I'm the only one. It's just, I mean, it is the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. And I do hard things all the time. And that I can say with 100% certainty that that is no joke. I mean, and I feel like nobody tells you how terrible it is. I always talk about the beauty of it.
Why we somehow forget the pain for a period of time and get pregnant again.
Right. I said, well, because our delivery was awful. I mean, it really was the worst ever.
Yeah. Like when she told me that on the phone, I'm like, I mean, really? God trusted you with a ton, didn't he?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
He knew you could do it, but you're thinking, no, I can't. No, I can't.
And I kept saying, I was like, you know, I know, God, I wanted to be pregnant. Like, I know I asked for this, but can you throw me a bone here? Like, just a little bit. Like, I'm old now. And they kept calling me geriatric. I'm like, I love you guys so much. This is
okay,
great.
Cindy, I'm going to like ask something personal. I forget. How old are you?
39.
Okay.
I was 38 when we got pregnant and then turned 39.
I thought you were close to 40. So
that's September. Yes, I know. The big 40.
Yes.
I know. It's exciting. But no, yeah, they considered me geriatric when I was pregnant and because of my history. But but the doctor kept saying, she was like, and literally I will never forget this. She looked at me like during the first appointment. Sorry, I told you I was emotional. She looked at me in the first appointment and she's like, I just want to let you know, I know you're like going like crazy about this. And she was like, and I know it's like a really rough ride for you. She's like, but I just want to let you know that you just have to be okay with the fact that you're witnessing a miracle right now. Like we're just witnessing, like this is what it is.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh, and I lost it. And I was like, okay. And she was so amazing. Literally, I
Is this the midwife?
She wasn't. She was. It's actually Dr. Boswell at Greenville Women's Clinic.
Yeah,
amazing. I mean, just so uplifting, so positive. Just, I mean, she really.
You hear that, Dr. Boswell?
Yeah. She really was. I mean, just amazing. And every time I go, and she would tell, like, just call me if you think anything, just call me, just come in, just tell them, you have to come in. And they were awesome. They were amazing there. They were so good. And I think I was just so used to. So when we went through IVF, the 2 doctors that we went to, I will not mention name. I mean, one of them was amazing, but his bedside manner was just very matter of fact and direct. Like, you want to get pregnant. And that's what we're here to do, is just to get you pregnant. We don't care about anything else. We're just going to get you pregnant. And so I was so used to, like,
cut and dry.
Okay, you're having a miscarriage. That's what's happening. And it's like, oh, okay. To, like, now this, like, very sensitive, loving, caring doctor. And it was just so amazing.
God knew that.
Yeah, it was that really just
got you through, didn't
it totally did. Because just hearing somebody, because every time I would go, I felt just so defeated, like, this is happening. And it was like that for ever, it seemed like. I was like, okay. And then the delivery I was like nervous to, I wanted the baby out because I was like done with it. But then I was nervous to be like, actually get the baby out. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, like, I've heard bad stories and good stories. It's like, which one is going to be mine, right?
Yeah. But nothing prepares you for anything, I feel like, with the whole pregnancy and the delivery. And I wound up, he basically got stuck. It was a natural delivery, but they induced me at 39 weeks because of my age. But I really, truly believe that my body wasn't ready. And I should have waited, and we didn't, and kind of just forced something that shouldn't have been forced. And so he wound up getting stuck. I pushed for 6 hours, a couple breaks between. It was rough. And then I wound up getting an infection, I was bound and determined I was going to nurse.
Yeah.
That was so much fun for the first 3 weeks. And then I finally said, something's got to give. I can't do this anymore. Yeah. But the nurses at the hospital were amazing. They heard, so one of them had heard the original podcast, and she was like, I'm here for you, anything you need, like whatever. She's like, I cannot believe this. Cool. Yeah. She was like, when I saw your name, I thought, oh my gosh, is this the one from the podcast? I was like, yeah, it's me. Yeah. So that was really, really special. I mean, the nurses at the hospital were, phenomenal. They were just so caring and loving. It was just amazing. Wow. So yeah, but it was a rough ride.
Yeah, rough. And also it was something so joyful and something that you guys had prayed about and longed for so long. But I found that, like, in different seasons of my own life, and we've talked about so much on different episodes of the podcast, and how, like, you pray for something, and God is so faithful to answer in His own timing and way. But surely if he had said, Cindy Taylor, you're going to be pregnant in April, and these are the things that are going to happen, I would be like, I'm running.
Yes.
Because whoa, back up, God.
Yeah. I know. Well, that's why I said, if I know what I knew now, I was like, I'm not happening. I do not want to be pregnant again. I love you, Jesus, but thank you. Okay, we're good now.
And it's just, he is so wise and so God not to tell us all the things. Yeah. Because he really does know exactly what we need to hear when we need to hear it. But in the moment, I want to know it all. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
When is this valley going to be over? Yeah. I know I'm coming out, but if you would just kind of tell me, then I could, control everything. And that's basically what I'm telling God.
Well, and that's what Lauren kept telling me. She was like, this is just a very different experience for you because you're not in control of anything. good luck. And I'm like, yes, you're right. And I hate it.
Sounds like your friend's a little prophet.
Yeah, she's like, well, and it's so funny because, you know, we have offices next to each other. So we'll just like yell back and forth to one another throughout the day. And she would always joke about stuff. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, because we work with all women. And so somebody get pregnant, I'm like, oh, why do they want to be pregnant? And we would just joke about it. And she's like, you know, you're going to wind up getting pregnant because of all this junky talk. And I'm like, no, God knows better than that. And I would just, you know, mess with her. And she was like, you just wait, Cindy, you just wait. And and so it was like a running joke back and forth with us. And you're like, well, you tested him. And he showed you, this is what happens when you call his bluff. This is what happens.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I know. And forever and ever, I said, oh my God, this is a miracle. And then I was telling you before, I was like, after a while, I was like, okay, is this a sick joke on me? Like, I'm really old. I feel like.
Well, I mean, I think that would be helpful, like for women that are listening, or maybe they know a friend that's going through something like this. And it might not even be like infertility or pregnancy, but just the unexpected of things that happen. Would you share like a little bit like of the people that kind of have and what God has orchestrated even in being pregnant? Because you and your husband are entrepreneurs, you run a business.
Yeah.
You have a set of twins that are 10.
Yes.
So your life is not slow.
Right.
So I think, you know, I don't know how people do it without Jesus, but, and I think, you know, when we are in hard times, calling on him, and he knows how fragile we are. Just sometimes we feel like we have to be so tough.
Yeah.
And know all the answers. So, I mean, will you share a little bit? So tell everybody his name.
So his name is Walker Wade Taylor.
Love it.
I know we went back and forth, but ultimately I said to Wesley, you know what? I don't care what his name is. I care that he is a healthy baby.
Yes.
I said, so you pick the name, and that's what he chose. So I was okay with it.
He does sound like a little tough guy, though. Walker Wade.
He is. Yep. It had to be Southern, you know. It had to be had to be manly. So there it is. Yeah. And he is the best, really. He is truly the best baby. And so I was like, okay, thank you, Jesus. You know, I need an easy one out of the three.
Out of the three, I know. You said he's been a really good baby.
He has. Yeah. He's been
Which, I mean, what babies are bad? But I do remember going through, you know, one of mine was a lot easier to train, if you will, than the other.
Yeah.
And, you know, that infant stage and trying to figure it all out. Yeah. We apologize to our first children so much. Just like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Right. Yes, I know. And that's what I said too, like with the twins. And obviously going from twins to a single, even though 10 years later, it's like, it literally is starting all over again, you guys. I mean, I had nothing, was totally unprepared for everything. So I was trying to remember, even as an occupational therapist who works with kids, I'm just trying to think of all the things. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, and my husband, like, it was funny because when we first found out we were pregnant, my husband, who was like, oh, you know, I don't care, it's fine. Then started like slowly realizing like, oh my gosh, we're going to be in diapers for a long time again. I'm like, yep, remember that, buddy? Or he'd be like, oh, you do realize, you know, our twins are going to be getting their driver's license when our baby starts kindergarten. I'm like, yes, all of these things you don't consider. And this is life now. Yeah. And so now we're living it, and it is hard. Yeah. It is very, very hard
we have
starting
a
over.
6-year age gap between our boys. So not 10, but 6 is still
that's
significant.
Yeah.
And I remember that feeling of like, I feel a lot older than I did the first time. And a lot of it, and I don't know, I have a question for you to answer, just going from my own experience. There were a lot of things the first time around, like with what you said, Gina, about I feel like you have to apologize to your oldest for a lot. I think because it was a 6-year gap, I had a lot of time during my second pregnancy to really process, you know, just some of that inner critic of like, well, I want to do this better, and I don't want to make the same mistake. Did you find yourself thinking at all, like, because you are almost having to remind yourself and get back in that mode when you have a bigger gap between children?
Yeah.
But did you find yourself contemplating, I want to do this different? And I know your situation is unique, obviously. Yeah. But I don't know.
And I get emotional when you even ask that question. And it's just because I didn't really realize what Lauren had to go through. Like now I'm like, you know, if I can't imagine myself doing this for somebody, you know, like my level of like appreciation of like what she did is far beyond now that I've gone through it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through that with twins. Like, that's insane. But also, I feel like with the twins, I was in such like I was younger, 10 years younger, and I was checking off boxes on my life goals, and having kids was one of them. And so I didn't really take it as serious as I should. And so I felt like getting pregnant was God's way of giving me a second chance of like really being a mom. And I felt horrible even like thinking that, because, you know, I want to believe that I was a decent mother to my twins. But I mean, like, I went to work a week after they were born. You know, I relied on help from a lot of people, and I was off busy doing a lot of other things. And so I think it was so refreshing, like being able to say, okay, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to focus on all three of my children now. And I think it was God's way of being like, okay, regroup.
Almost like a reset.
Yeah, it was. And it was like, what are your priorities here, Cindy? You know, like, it's not about work. It's not about just checking things off the list. It's not about trivial things like that. This is like, these are human lives that you get to raise and mold and shape. And what are you going to do with this now? You know? And it was kind of like, okay, I got you. Like, and so it really was awesome for me to really see that and get to experience it. And so it was, and looking back too, I there was no way I could have worked within the first 6 weeks,
right?
Because I was just going through so much just recovery. Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, it is wild what happens to your body,
happens to a woman's body.
Oh, it is awful too. Like, just the things that I would say to my husband, like, is this ever going to go back? Is this ever going to happen again? Like, hey,
yes and no.
Yes. I know. Oh yeah. But so yes, so I think it was a really good way for me to just figure out in life, like, okay, this is really the meaning here. And so, yeah, I absolutely have a whole new appreciation of what Lauren went through, and what, you know, most women go through. And just having the twins, I feel like, was hard because you're two at one time, but now having three or even just one child and then taking care of two others, like, I don't know how people do. Like, this is really, really hard, you guys.
I know. And I mean, I only had two, but they were 2 years apart. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not going to eat lunch. I'm just going to eat their leftovers. Yeah. So it'd be like, you know, peanut butter and jelly. I ate their crumbs, you know. It's kind of like it was off to the next thing. But I think something you hit on that I really believe so many women deal with is, you know, you can term it what you want, but and name it, but like mom guilt.
Oh gosh,
of
huge.
What, and it could be over, you know, anything. Yeah. I mean, and how you're wired, which is, you know, very goal driven, and you enjoy your job, and you enjoy,
I love it. Yeah,
and you
I love
enjoy. It's, you know, it's a blessing to enjoy what you do and what God has called your family to do through Carolina Therapy Connection and other businesses. But at the same time, it's like being able to navigate that and the rhythms of life and the calendar of children and your marriage. Let's
gosh. Yeah, that is tough.
I mean, it's like, we want to parent our children good, but let's not forget, you know, we had something before them, which was called our marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And so scheduling those. Yeah. So tell me how you and Wesley, like, I mean, isn't that hard?
It's extremely difficult. And we are going through a very trying season. I will not even, you know, try and paint it as a good picture right now.
Well, thank you for being real with us.
Extremely hard. And then also too, because, you know, he owns two businesses. He's, you know, building houses. He does all the countertop stuff. And he's more hands-on in his business than I am. I can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
He is hands-on. And so I have a little bit more flexibility, which is nice. But at the same time, I still, those are additional babies to us,
Yes.
And so it's hard because as a parent, I feel like my life has changed 110%. Like we're going complete directions now, like, cause we have a baby. And there are times that I'm like, you know what, your life hasn't changed. Like we need to figure this out. Like there needs to be some give and take. Cause now you're used to doing whatever you want, whenever you want. And then, or, the whole baseball thing, and that can go on a whole nother
throw
tangent.
in our children enjoying doing things.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Even if we don't enjoy that thing.
Right.
It's like,
Well, and what's hard is that, like him and my son, older son, went to Florida for spring training games, and it's me and Catherine. So it's like, Catherine's kind of getting roped into being a little mommy, and I feel bad sometimes because she's like, Daddy and Colton always get to do the fun things, and then I'm here with you and the baby. And I'm just kind of like, I know, yes, because that's life now. But at the same time, it makes you feel really bad because she's a sister. She's not really the mom.
Yeah.
So that's also, navigating that is very difficult. It's just
being able to be thankful that she loves the baby Walker.
Oh,
wants
yes.
to help.
Oh yeah, that's his.
But also
favorite
knowing
person.
like to keep that in check. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that because there's so many women, whether they're working from within the home or outside the home. And like you said, you have flexibility, but you still have to be disciplined about that.
Right.
Because working from home
Yeah.
and then trying to piece that all together. I think, with our marriages, especially if you are in a marriage where like you've been married 15 years. Lauren, how long have y'all been married?
We'll be 20 in August.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And this June we'll be going on 34.
Oh, wow.
And so with all looking at it, I just think that the longer we stay married, we will appreciate each other more if we have more conversations and communication about how each other are feeling.
Yeah.
Because you're like, those feelings you're having are real, and those feelings he's having are real. And they're valid, but it doesn't mean that they're all true.
Right.
Meaning like, this is how I'm feeling about this situation, or, it's
Right.
just that our emotions are real.
Yeah.
But I think, encouraging people, and, you hear Pastor Aaron say it all the time from the pulpit. And we all is really just saying, okay, this is a tough season. And my family before me really didn't have to navigate this particular because ours is unique. So let's get some therapy about this.
Yeah.
Or seek wiser and older Christian wives and husbands that have been through this season, and can surely tell you what they wish they hadn't done.
Right.
And maybe have learned along the way. But anyway, I appreciate you being real about that because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's very hard to navigate work, life, kids, and keeping the main thing. As far as that goes.
Yeah.
So,
And that's also too, like, you feel like, so many times in my head, I'm like, well, I got up with the baby twice tonight, and you didn't do anything, and you get to go to work, and I'm staying. Like, there's so many of these like tally, like keeping score of like, oh well, I washed 3 bottles today. You only washed 1, it's kind of like, and it's exhausting, and at the end of the day, it's like, okay, wait, hold on. We're on the same team here, and each one of us have important jobs that we need to do. And how do we work together on this versus, okay, it's me against you type of situation.
Competitive.
That's hard.
I've watched more bottles than you.
I know. Well, Lauren, you've been through this where you're navigating work because through all your pregnancies, you have worked. Me too, and had children. And like, I think it'd be fun just to kind of, before we end this episode, is throw out some things that you may have learned that helped your marriage, you and Pastor Aaron's, and then me too, because like, it's good to talk about those things.
Oh, yeah. I think just to get some context, I could relate so much with what you're sharing. So when we had Wesley, I was working full time with my parents at their business. Aaron was here, I believe. Yeah, he was working for church. And after having Wesley, anytime it's funny when I hear people say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to own my own business." I'm like, you really don't know what you're asking.
You don't,
because it's so much responsibility.
It's a child,
and it is. And we had this whole grandiose plan. At the time, I was the only person that did my particular role with my family. And so we had this whole grandiose plan, and we were bringing in this guy to like temporarily do my job while I was out, and everything was going to be so perfect. And then Wesley came a month early.
Oh, wow.
So I only had 2 weeks with this person I was training.
Oh, gosh.
And I went back to work 2 weeks after I had Wesley.
Yeah.
I mean, part-time, but I just didn't. Originally, it wasn't the whole, I'm going to have 6 to 8 weeks off and it's going to work out great. So I didn't have that either. Yeah. And it was I had so much guilt for that.
Yeah.
Because because Aaron's job was much more flexible.
Yeah.
All I saw was all the bonding that they got to do. And so I fought that a lot. So then the second time around, I thought, well, it's just going to all work out great this time too.
It never does.
And at the time, I was still working with my parents. I had more flexibility. However, I had, again, it's just funny the plans that you make.
Yeah.
And then God's that's not
really
going to go
so
like
funny.
how you think it is. But it ended up, when David ended up having a heart condition, it forced me to be home instead of, I think I was originally going to take off 8 weeks. I mean, I was home for like 6 months, essentially. Yeah. So it was much more of a commitment on my part to be the one that stayed home, and then having an older child.
Yeah.
And having to navigate it. So going through, the whole time you're talking, I'm like, I have so been there. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so relatable, and I appreciate your honesty about it, because there's so many, especially working moms who do work outside the home, you fight that of like, we are a team, and I have to remind myself of that. However, I am really feeling it right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because we're both, it's the constant feeling of making adjustments and the talking about schedules. And that's where it can get very draining. And I think what you're asking me, that was a long way to answer this.
But no, that was good. That helped me kind of remember. Now I remember now what
I was mad about being home. I was like, I don't want to be home. I'd rather be at work. And it just, it's all the things. But I guess to bring it all back together, because when you are in like infancy and toddler, and it's a constant calendar talk, it's a constant, like, it feels like it can become more business.
For sure.
And I think the one thing that Aaron and I learned later on, a skill, was just having like the heart talk of like the wows, the worries, the wishes, and the wounds. Because as simple and maybe dumb as that sounds, it got us out of the routine of only talking about schedules, only talking about the kids, only talking about the things that had to happen.
Yeah.
And this happens, like, we'll take a walk for 15, 20 minutes from the neighborhood. So it's not like you have to have hours of conversation. It just kind of recenters us and resets our minds of like, hey, we are the priority. Just because now we have a teenager and a 9-year-old doesn't mean we stop dreaming together.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what we learned. I wish I would have learned it sooner. But for us, that kind of is like one of those things that I've always remembered.
Well, that communication tool, the worries, the wishes, and the wounds is good, because it actually gets you to voice things that you're kind of fearful to say. But if you're both saying them, and then realizing like the wow, like I remember in one season, really, it was just a couple of months ago, I was going through a particular situation. And my friend asked me, well, what's your wow today? And she's like, one of her strengths is positivity. And I'm like, shut up.
Around us,
I don't want to talk about positive things. But it truly was like, it almost made me mad, because I'm like, I don't want to talk about that right now because I can't think of anything. And then I felt bad for thinking that I couldn't think of anything. And so it kind of like showed me where my perspective had gotten because of the situation, and knowing and reminding myself that God is in the worries and the wounds and all the things that I'm feeling, but he's still wowing me if I would just recognize it, and I know it's human, but I really do think that's a good tool. And one thing I wanted to say, like, I know so many women that are really trying before we end the day to like get pregnant, IVF, things that you have been through that are living it. And one particular like friend I have just talking about how hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. It really is true, because you feel like God has put you on a deferral list, kind of like, when you're applying to colleges and they're like, oh no, you're not going to that school. You're going over here. We're going to put you on the deferred list, which is the waiting list, because it's not your time. And that's just not how God works. Yeah. But the enemy just has this like movie reel that he plays in our brains that he's putting us off. And the unexpected in Walker Wade.
Yes.
Is your story. I think it's just such a story of redemption, hope, and grace. And really, that was the last thing you were even thinking.
Oh gosh. Well, and so this is what so I know God 100% had a hand in all of this. I mean, literally, there's no way possible that I feel like I would have gotten pregnant. I mean, there was no try. We never did anything because we thought, I can't get pregnant. And for 15 years, literally, I don't get pregnant, and we were not preventing it. But yet all of a sudden, and it's the timing. It is the total timing. I will say, though, for people who are in the spot where they're just trying so hard to get pregnant, I think a huge part of this has to do with stress levels. And I know everybody says it all the time, you're stressed, whatever, but it really is true. I have, for the first time, for 15 years, because I went from grad school to basically a new job, getting married, owning a business, a year and a half, and then trying to get pregnant, and then constant growth of everything, and then having kids. Literally, when I came in and talked to you guys on the podcast, that was the first time that in my life I really hadn't felt overwhelmed by stress, and was in a very good space of just letting things kind of ride and getting to a point where I don't feel like I have to control everything, where I'm just surrendering more. And I think that is so, so important for people to know, is that when you stop trying and you stop trying to force something, and it's just so easy to say, I can sit here and say it all day long,
like, don't stress.
Yes, but it truly is, it really, and that was the last thing on our minds. And that was also like, there was no, even if I think if we were trying to get pregnant, I wouldn't have. But I just think the stress is huge. Such a huge part of it.
Such a good point, which is going to be fun, because in a future episodes, Pastor Lauren has invited Stacia Friend to come on, and we're going to, she's a midwife, and we're going to be talking about hormones and women and our bodies and things we go through, in and outside of pregnancy, obviously, but just even myself being in menopause, hormones tell, and our blood work tells our story, which is so awesome because Jesus died for all of it. But you are true, like sickness and our bodies, all that's so closely tied together.
It is.
Sometimes those things don't manifest till later on.
Right.
Because it's really how we coped with trauma or cope with things to kind of just muster through without really getting healed.
Right.
And that was just something that you said that just... I wanted to remind people that take time to heal. Before the next thing. Because if not, you'll take that pain into the next season and unintentionally cause more wounds without even realizing what you're doing and not meaning to. But that's so neat that during that season when we really recorded, you were at such a
and it was almost that podcast too, like just recording it, almost kind of, because I never really talked about it out loud. If people asked me about it, or And during the pregnancy, I've talked more about surrogacy than anything else because everyone was like, oh, you have twins, right? I'm like, yes, but I didn't have them. I had a surrogate. And I'm like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you got to tell me how that went, like, so I talked about it more now than I ever have. And I just think getting that out there and just feeling like, because and I think I said this last podcast is that, I had, even though I was okay, I had twins, I had my boy and girl, it still felt broken as a woman that I could not get pregnant. And I still felt like I carried that with me. But like after the podcast, I was like, this is, and the whole like waiting room and just waiting and being okay with that. I think that almost kind of like freed me a little bit, to be like, okay, well, this is out now.
This is my story.
This is it. It didn't happen for me. It's okay. That's sometimes how life works. And so I feel like then it was just kind of like, all right, well, I'm not carrying this with me at all anymore, And so I think that was helpful. And then even more of a surprise when I actually did wait, hold on. Wait.
And here we go.
Wait, no, God, I closed the door on that. We were good.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
You got to keep your seatbelt on with God, that's for sure. Because
oh my gosh.
He's like, buckle up because you just have no idea what's coming. But
you know what's so funny about the whole entire thing though is that back before Wesley and I got married and when like vision boards, I don't know if vision boards are still a thing, but oh, okay. All right, good. I haven't made one in a really long time, but I made this vision board.
It's all digital now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, probably. So before we got married, I had made, and we were living in, I wasn't living down here just yet, but I had made this vision board. And on the vision board, I had put like all of these things. And it was out of magazine stuff because, that was how it was. Yeah. And on the vision board, I did have a picture of me being pregnant on there. Like you can make it like just a face of me or whatever. And then, so I always felt like in the back of my mind, like I would get pregnant. It just some way or another. But then when we had the twins, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it was just, this was God's way of saying like, this is how you're going to get pregnant. But every single thing on that vision board that I eventually became prayers and me praying about has come true 100% literally. And it was like, this was the last piece of that vision board that was on there however many years ago. So I always tell people like when you pray, and I've been doing this much more lately, is that don't like pray big prayers, but then also be like super, super specific about it. Like this is what I really,
don't be scared to ask, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I'll do that for things at work now too. Like, God, like this is what we really need. Like, and sometimes it doesn't show up like that exact thing, but it's just amazing the things that happen when that, you couldn't have made happen on your own.
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy. It's just wild. Just thinking about it just is
really stretching your faith.
It's insane.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We could do a few more episodes of that.
Oh my gosh.
Stretching our faith. Be a whole nother thing.
There's just so many things that you could go into.
I know. Well, we've touched on so many things today, and I just want to remind people that are listening before we close is that we love hearing stories, and we love hearing what God's doing in your life, and we also enjoy getting your prayer requests because we'd love to pray for you. So Pastor Lauren and I get these emails. We'd love for you to send them to renew@opendoorchurch.com. And I want to remind the women that we have just started a Clearstream text that actually will be coming to you. You can text renew to 45,000 and you can be a part of that. If you're already in our database at Open Door, you're on there, women 18 and up. But we're going to tell you about things that are happening here in women outreach, opportunities to serve. And just recently we've announced March 25th, 2025, we'll be having a day of renewal. And so more details to come about that. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad I was able to come back. That was so
we love a good
cool. Who would have known? I know.
We love it. And we can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks so much.